All right, guys, what's going on? I've received a lot of emails and questions about the homework assignment. So I thought probably a good idea that I cover the partner practice problems that we would have done in class. Sorry I didn't initially make them. I was working off of my lecture from the last one, and I didn't remember that last semester I decided to add all these new practice problems, which the students last semester found pretty effective. So quick video, we're just going to solve through these problems and then hit that FRQ. I'm going to try and get that uploaded. Sometimes YouTube takes a little bit of time for the video to process, but I think this should be online by 11. I'll extend the deadline for the homework assignment until 5 tonight. That way we have enough time to review this and go from there. Cool. So let's start with partner practice. Number one, what we know is that there's a reserve requirement of 10%. So I'm going to put that right there. Reserve requirement is 10%. We know that our money multiplier is 1 over our reserve requirement. So we're going to be working with a multiplier. In this case, our money multiplier is going to be 1 over 0.1. So our multiplier is going to be 10 for our first problem. So let's figure out what's going on here. Person A deposits $500 into Union Bank. What is the initial amount of new loans that the bank can make from this deposit? Okay, we don't need the multiplier for this one because it's just asking us the initial amount of new loans the bank can make from this deposit. So $500 goes into the bank. That bank has to put it in two spots if we remember. They have to put it into the required reserves and into the excess reserves. The excess reserves can later be used to make new loans and thus new money. But for the case of right now, we're just going to say, all right, 10% of 500 is 50 bucks. So $50 is going to stay in the required reserves of the bank, and this bank will have $450 of excess reserves as a result of this deposit. That money can become new loans. Okay. Then it says, what is the maximum expansion of the money supply as a result of this deposit? Okay, now that they're talking about a maximum expansion of the money supply or a maximum change in the money supply, any one of those terms, they start talking about maximum money supply or time. Anytime they use those types of terminology, they want to know what's going to happen. In that case, that's when we use our equation of initial new loans times our multiplier will equal our maximum expansion. So in this case, our initial new loans that can be created from our $500 deposit are 450 bucks. And then $450 times our money multiplier of 10, beep, this deposit can result in a maximum expansion of the money supply of $4,500. So that's number 2. This was number 1. Let's find out what number 3 says. What is the total change in the checkable deposits in the banking system as a result of this deposit? Okay, maximum change in the checkable deposits. Originally, $500 went into person A's checkable deposit. So the checkable deposits of that bank increased by 500 bucks initially. And over time, we apply the multiplier to it. Over time, it's going to result in a 5,000 increase in checkable deposits. So 3, we would say it's our initial deposit times the money multiplier equals the maximum change in the checkable deposits of the banking system over time. And we saw that up here when we worked this one out. In our example, we had $1,000 was deposited by person A. They put 1,000 in. Then the next time person C deposits 900, then it was 800. That 1,000 will be hit by our full money multiplier. So in this case, it was, I can't remember what it's 10%? Yeah. So this one would have been 1,000 times 10 is 10,000. The new reserves, when you add that bad boy out, when your new reserves initially is 1,000 times the money multiplier, will be 1,000. The new reserves will actually always end up equaling the amount of the initial deposit, and new loans is our new money. All right, partner practice number 2. This was number 1 and number 2. And this time we're working with a required reserve ratio of 20%. So here my RR equals 20.20. Our money multiplier is 1 over our required reserve ratio. So 1 over 0.2. My money multiplier this time is going to be 5. And this time, there's 1,000 in here, so you know calculator's coming out on Mr. Holmes' side. Person A deposits $1,000 into Bank of America. What is the initial amount of new loans that Bank of America can make from this deposit? Same question again. Person A, number 1. Person A decides to deposit $1,000 into the checkable deposit of Bank of America. Required by law, the bank is going to have to hold on to 20%. 20% of 1,000 is $200. And so this goes into the required reserves. That's the E, required reserves. This would go into excess reserves. Excess reserves can become new loans. New loans are new money. So this one says, what is the initial amount of new loans that Bank of America can make from this deposit? $800. All right. What is the maximum expansion of the money supply as a result of this deposit? They use the word maximum. So when you hear maximum, once again, we're like, oh, okay, that's going to be money multiplier. The other one they'll say is maximum change over time. If you hear change over time, you're going to feel PTSD from a DBQ from AP World. Like, CCOT, I say, and if you feel that anxiety, then you know you hit the money multiplier. So if we want to know what is going to be the maximum expansion of the money supply, we use this equation up here again. It's our initial new loans times our multiplier. So in this case, our new loans, our initial new loans they can make are $800. The multiplier we're working here with is 5. I'm pretty sure that's $4,000, but I'm just going to double check that. 800 times 5, thank goodness, is 4,000 bucks. That's number 1. That's number 2. Let's figure out what number 3 asks us. Number 3, what's the total change in checkable deposits in the banking system? Okay, same thing as last time. We're going to use our initial deposit times our multiplier equals the maximum change in our checkable deposits over time. So what's our initial deposit? Person A deposited $1,000. We multiply that by our money multiplier of 5. So the maximum change in the checkable deposits is going to be $5,000. Okay. So that's number 2. And let's get to number 3. Make some little bit of room here. Check out lined paper today. I didn't have to draw a funny squiggly in the middle. Who would have thought lined paper serves its own squiggles? So this time we've got person A deposits, oh, come on. Am I missing a 0? That's brutal. Person A deposits $25,000 in First Republic Bank. All right, so what is the initial amount of new loans? All right, homie, let's see. We've got person A deposits $25,000. They're going to have to put some amount into the required reserve, and the rest can become excess reserves. So what's our reserve requirement? Our reserve requirement is 20% or 0.2, which means my money multiplier is 1 over my required reserve rate. So 1 over 0.2. Once again, my money multiplier is 5. So let's see. What is 20% of 25,000? I think it's 5. But I'm going to use some math here. 25,000 times 0.2 is 5,000. So, as required by law, this bank is going to have to hold on to $5,000 in its required reserves at the bank, not to be loaned out to anybody else. What's going to go into excess reserves? $20,000. That can become new loans or new money in the economy. So this one says, what's the amount of new loans? Number one was $20,000. What's the maximum expansion of the money supply as a result of the deposit? All right, so once again, we're going to have 20,000. That's our initial new loans times our money multiplier should be 100,000. But just because this is, yeah, okay, I just want to make sure before I put something on the internet that I can solve for simple multiplication. Boom! All right, so that's number two. This is number one. And where's number three? Number three says, what is the total change in the checkable deposits of the banking system based off its deposit? All right, so in this case, our initial deposit was $25,000 times our money multiplier. So 25 times 5 is $125,000. And that solves part of practice number three. Then during the lecture, I worked through the slides on limitations of maximum increase in the money supply, and we wrapped up, well, in theory, oh, it's a dog. In theory, we had to wrap it up with, come here, no, oh, good kaboosh. Oh, there's my associate. This is Emma. Hi, Emma. Say hi, Emma. Hello, sir. So let's do our FRQ. This is from 2016, and it was a T-chart. Sorry, now I have a baby crying in the background. You go ahead. We have a T-chart and a bunch of deposit questions. So let's turn this bad boy over and let's work this thing out. So 2016 FRQ. So let's see. They're saying that a reserve requirement is 10%. Cool, which means my money multiplier needs to be 1 over my required reserve rate. 1 over 0.1. My money multiplier is going to be 10. Uh-oh. Squiggly. Look, fella. Look at the squiggles. Come on. See the squiggle? It's like the eye of Ra. Focus. Look into the soul of the mummy. Come on. Stay focused. All right, frustrating. Let's try a brown paper. Focus. Look at my thumb. There we go. All right, we're back in business. So this is our 2016 FRQ with a required reserve rate of 10% and a money multiplier of 10. I'm not going to solve them out. I just did that a second ago. All right, number one. Letter A. Letter A asks us, what is the dollar amount of new loans that First Superior Bank can make and explain? Well, they have total demand deposits of $2,000. The required reserve rate is 10%, and their total reserves is $200. Total reserves needs to be made up of required reserves and excess reserves. So what is 10% of 2,000? You're right. The required reserves is $200, which means there is no excess reserves. So what is the dollar amount of new loans this bank can make? 0. The answer to A would be 0, and why? Because this bank has currently holding only the required reserves required by law. Or you can say they've loaned out the maximum amount of new loans because 200 is 10% of 2,000. B. B says Mr. Smith deposits $100 of cash into his demand deposit account at First Superior Bank. Calculate the maximum amount of new loans they can now make. Okay, so he's putting in $100 into his bank account. So the required reserve is 10%. So how much does he have to hold in the bank? He's got to hold, well, the bank has to hold $10 in their account, which means the new loans would become 90 bucks. We could test this out and we could draw our T-chart here and we could say, all right, my checkable deposits have now gone to 2,100. My required reserves and my excess reserves. So I originally had 200 in there. Now my required reserves, if I do 2,100 times 0.1, that gives me 210. And then the rest would go into my excess reserves of 90 over there. So 210, we said 10, there's our new loans. We're good, everything's looking good. That takes us to C. I'm gonna try and move this up a little bit. Oh, I'm gonna mess this camera up again. We're gonna, do I risk it? Let's do C up here so I don't lose focus on the camera and waste your time some more. As a result of Mr. Smith's $100 cash deposit, calculate the maximum change over time in each of the following banking systems: the new loans and demand deposits. Calculate the maximum change over time. Wow, they used both words. They said maximum and they said change over time. So you have maximum saying hit the money multiplier, hit change over time, which gives you anxiety from a CCOT essay. They both tell you go back to the money multiplier. So the money multiplier is 10. What's going to happen to new loans? We're going to use the equation, our initial new loans times the money multiplier will give us our maximum change over time. So the amount that we can make in new loans is, 90 bucks, because that 90 became our excess. So our initial new loans, $90, times our money multiplier, which we decided was 10. As a result of who is this? Mr. Smith. As a result of Mr. Smith's $100 deposit into the bank, there's a $900 maximum change in loans or new money in our economy. Part C2, what is going to be the maximum change over time of demand deposits? Well, he put $100 in, that goes into this system and every other banking system. So $100 of new deposits times our money multiplier is going to give us our maximum change in our demand deposits in the economy over time. So 900 and 1,000. Part D, as a result of Mr. Smith's cash deposit, calculate the maximum change in time of the money supply. This is them checking your understanding that money supply and new loans are the same. It should have confused you a second. You're like, wait a minute, I thought they were the same. And you're right. Once again, College Board loves those trick questions. It's checking your understanding. So once again, what's the new change in money supply? New loans are the same as new money, so just straight up 900 bucks. Initial new loans times the money multiplier gives us $900. And then finally, Part E. Part E says provide one reason why the actual change in the money supply can be smaller than the maximum change you identified in Part D. Well, there were 3 reasons. They're only asking for one. The first time is banks hold excess reserves. Banks don't loan out all their money. They don't have credit-worthy customers. They don't see any value in making a loan to somebody because they may not get their money back. And if they hold on to their excess reserves, then the maximum change is going to go over time. The second one was called leakage to cash and coin, which means I get paid for something. I do some tutoring or whatever. I get paid $1,000. I decide that I'm going to put $900 into my checkable deposit account, and I'll keep $100 under my pillow in the event of an emergency. So only $900 goes into checkable deposits. Part of it is held, the rest of it's multiplied out. But that 100 that's sitting in my wherever I said closet, pillowcase, under my bed, whatever, that didn't go in, didn't get multiplied out. So leakage to cash and coin. And the third one that I said was debatable was time. So those are our 3. You guys, I will get that uploaded as soon as it gets onto YouTube. And you guys have a great day. Stay tuned for the next episode. I think it's going to be module 8, I think is what we're on now. I'm going to post that tonight. Should be due on Friday. See ya, homies.